All right, hey, Ben from Dude Quest here, and the title of this video is maybe slightly misleading, but I do feel like it's relevant in the current moment because what I want to talk about today is more about attention than any particular, political, you know, uh, framework or belief system or anything like that. And really, the just kind of the tension in the culture right now has just brought me back down a rabbit hole of reflecting on when I've been more or less addicted to news and the purpose I realize in retrospect that was serving for me, and just kind of wishing that I had those hours back. Honestly, it was probably not the best use of my time. So, anyways, I got a couple points I want to cover, and again, this is not about any particular political idea or anything like that at all. It really is more about attention and what we give our focus to, and why that matters. And really, I'm just going to put it in the framework of things that I've experienced personally, which is always my goal here. So I'm going to actually start with a, a little story about a radio show that was covering Flat Earth one day. So lots and lots of fun on this one. Again, this is not a conspiracy theory video. This is not a political video, and none of this is mental health advice or anything like that. So so let's cover that right off the get-go. So anyway, without further ado, so there's a radio show, and it was covering basically the host was having people call in, and they were just debating, whether or not the Earth is flat. And I think the host was coming at it from a perspective of trying to make. He was hoping to have a reasonable conversation and open the dialogue to hopefully bring some people back from being so extreme in their belief. And there's this one particular kid who called in. I feel like it was the way this conversation was really relevant to what we give our focus to. Because this kid called in, he's really young. He's like somewhere between, he's early 20s. I don't think he was any older than 22, max. Like just kind of starting his adult life. And so he calls in and he gives his reasons why he thinks the Earth is flat and what a big deal it is and what a huge hoax it is, and everyone needs to know the truth, and what a great lie that we've all been told and that we've come to believe. And the host, pushes back, and they go back and forth on a couple particular points, and eventually the host just kind of drops the argument. He's like, I think we can agree to disagree, but let me just ask you, how old are you? And the kid said how young he is, and the host responds, it seems like you give a lot of attention to this. You probably spent a lot of time thinking about this and watching videos or whatever it is, and I'm just curious why it matters so much to you. And the kid responds by saying that he wants to know the truth, and that nothing else matters as long as he knows the truth, and that makes it it's like a virtuous stand, right? Like he's going to expose the great lie. So the host replies just by asking him some questions about his life. They completely shift the topic away from flat Earth entirely, and asks him, well, just tell me a little bit about your day to day. What kind of job do you work? What do you spend your time on? How's your romantic life, family life? What are your friends? And the kid just responds that he's like mostly a loner, and works in a warehouse. He makes like $13-15 an hour, something like that, and that he's like frustrated with his boss and is a little bit grim on the outlook for where he's going to go next. Really, really common, right? Really, really common. Like that's almost the sign of the times, is being a little bit stuck and demoralized in your early 20s. And the host just replies to him point blank and says, well, I don't understand why you're spending so much time figuring out all the details about flat Earth and watching these videos and spending time in online forums and all that kind of thing. If you're struggling with these things in your day-to-day personal life, it feels like if you spent time on other things, just a little bit of self-improvement, working on a budget, doing a little side gig or whatever it is, like even just being better at your job currently and making a good impression on your manager to get a raise, like all these little things. And I know nothing's perfect, but the idea is that, you're spending your time and attention on this thing that isn't helping you. And the kid basically says, I'm willing, it doesn't matter, I'm willing to suffer to expose the truth. And that's kind of where they ended up agreeing to disagree. I don't think the host got through to him all the way. Because the kid was basically just taking a hardline stance that, this is the way things are, and the only thing that matters is exposing the truth, and I'm willing to kind of like sacrifice any personal gain to spend my time on this and expose a lie. It was just really interesting because the host clearly is trying to communicate the point that this is not serving you. What you're giving your attention to right now, it's a huge amount of wasted energy at this kind of critical moment in your life. And I just can't help but think that applies to most news. And especially, that's definitely been my experience. I've gone through stages where life is very stressful and I'm not making the kind of progress I want. And there's been no shortage, right, of big inflammatory, news in the past. Oh my gosh. I mean, you could go back really far. You can go back pre-COVID. You can go back, a long time, 10 years almost, of things that have been in the news. And it's also the nature of the news cycle, right? It's just to grip your attention and keep you focused on that kind of stuff. But it mostly is all a passing thing. And very, very little of the things that we read online actually affect our day-to-day experience. I mean, in really, really direct ways, and especially the things that we focus on in the news that we actually have any control over whatsoever. I mean, whether or not we read the article or don't read the article, gas prices are going to go up and down, food prices are going to go up and down. Things are what they are. We don't really have that much control over these kind of huge macro trends that come and go through society. And I was really reassured recently because I was spending time with a much older mentor of mine. And we were talking a little bit about the election. He's like, yeah, in all my years, I think this guy's coming up on 80. He's definitely in his 70s. He's probably approaching 80. All my years, no matter who has been elected president, life just has kind of gone on. And it's never affected my life that I've ever really noticed. And, I know that there are different walks of life, and some people are more directly affected than others, but in a large respect, life just kind of goes on. And I found that really reassuring. And I think it's something worth saying at this moment in time. Life goes on. Because at the end of the day, we still, all of us, have to go get groceries. We all need some kind of, roof over our head. We all have families and people that we're accountable to and that we care about. So, is anyone not going to go and watch, the football game this Saturday because of the election results? Like life by and large goes on. And I just think that it can be real folly to give too much of our attention and energy to these huge macro things when the truth is, if we all turned off the news and just stopped reading it entirely and just participated in our local communities, I think we wouldn't notice a lot of the things that make us stressed currently. And I guess, that was definitely, my experience. I've definitely fallen into things where I'm spending, hours and hours watching documentaries and reading articles, and constantly, like every time that my brain gets tired or needs a distraction, I pull up my phone and I can like tab through my different news websites and reading the articles and getting the opinions and learning the ins and outs. And it's like, how much of that stuff have I forgotten, and how much did it ever serve me to put that kind of focus on it, And the other truth is that any time that I have spent that kind of time and energy focusing on news is when I've been most stressed. I've it's a really easy distraction to justify negative feelings about life. And that might not be you. And I'm not saying that there aren't things that are sometimes worth paying attention to, but just like by and large, I feel that I have spent years of my life focusing on these things that didn't affect me, I had no control over, and just made me in a bad mood. And it was a complete distraction from dealing with the things that I needed to focus on, which was like my professional situation, or overspending in certain categories, or just feeling out of control with life, or like a tense family situation, or anything like that. It's just there's a lot of things that I was running from in retrospect, and the news was one of the ways that I was able to it was a coping mechanism 100%. And so I would encourage, like, I think it's important for all of us, and myself included, to just kind of take a self-assessment. It's like, how much am I giving my attention to this? Because our attention by and large will dictate our kind of like internal emotional state, right? And it's what we give our attention to and the quality of that attention, right? Are we looking for the bad things, or are we looking for things that reasons that things will be okay? And are we looking for good things? Do we walk, go to the park and take a walk and look at the birds and think that they're really cool? Or do we go to the park and take a walk and notice every little bit of litter on the ground and get pissed? So it's a lot about perspective, and day-to-day life, I think, is largely dependent on perspective, even if there are things that are tough and frustrating and hard to deal with. So I also think that just by getting on with the day-to-day is really the way that we arrive at what we actually believe. I've definitely held beliefs in the past that I kind of arrived at arbitrarily. Like, there was a time, and certainly still this is the case, but there are many things that I can realize in retrospect that I believed just because I kind of chose to, and not because I had any real life experience to back it up. And just by living life and caring about the people close to me, and just focusing on what I need to do next in like each big category of my life, or that's how I've arrived at what I believe. And I believe the things I believe based on the outcomes that they've produced, in my life and in others' lives. So I think that's a way more grounded approach, and it's definitely spared me a lot of trouble, because I no longer feel the need to go out and have like literally, this is how I used to be. I used to have like a list of things, like issues and topics that were like in the political realm or whatever, like philosophical realm, whatever. And I felt like I had to go through each topic and research it and decide what I thought about each topic, so that I knew exactly what I thought about everything. And I had absolutely no tolerance for saying I don't know, which I think is a really, really healthy response. There's a rule of thumb that I heard in the past, that if you can't give at least a 20 to 30 minute presentation on both sides of an argument, then it's just like, it's not something that we should feel super entrenched in or feel overly strongly about. Because if we haven't taken the time to understand it, it probably doesn't really apply to us, and it probably isn't really going to be a beneficial use of our time and attention. So anyway, yeah, I do think that we learn by living better than we learn the way I used to be, which was make a list of topics and go through and just try and learn all the facts and details. And oftentimes that's a really, really slanted angle to take on things, because you often have a kind of feeling of what you want to be true, and then you kind of go and, like, that's the way I used to write school papers and high school essays, right? It's like, I know that this is what I want to say to get a good grade based on what the teacher thinks or wants me to say, and I'm going to go and cherry pick quotes from sources that I didn't read, single line quotations, because I'm required to have evidence, right? And I think that's a lot of, at least I've fallen into that trap in the past, for sure. So, yeah, I think that minding the day-to-day, focusing on what we have control over, giving attention to the things that directly impact our lives is a way more grounded way to be. And it's given me a lot of peace, because I know that I can say I don't know to things until I come to that juncture in my life, and then I can understand it then, when it's time. And I think that way I'm not prematurely forming beliefs or being an overly rigid person. And at least for me, that's given me a lot of peace. I don't feel this pressure to know everything about everything. And I think that's a rough place to be. So, there is a concept like this that I picked up actually from going to therapy, and it's called the circles of control. And there's the circle of things that we directly control, the circle of things that we kind of sort of influence, and the circle of things that we just don't. Right? That's like beyond our realm. And the circle of things that we actually control, realistically, is just about how we respond and react to things and what we give our attention to. And the degree of things that we influence are the people in our lives, our work situation, things that we can put the thumb on the scale for how the outcome comes out, but they're not things that we, can definitely decide this is what I want. Like, you don't walk into work and be like, today I get the raise. Like, it's not really. You can do all the things that make it more likely for that to be the case, but you can't just go in and be like, yep, I get the raise. You can't walk into an interview and say, today I'm hired, and they're like, what are you talking about, right? So it's like, there's a lot of peace in focusing on what you can control and trusting the process, being good-willed towards the things that you influence, and really, really detaching from the things that are beyond that. And it's not, I don't really believe in like total indifference and non-attachment like Buddhists or like you would learn in Stoicism or something like that. I really don't want to go into like the philosophical realm with this, but there's just more peace to be had by focusing on the things that more directly influence your world and your life. So, and I'll just, I wish I had the hours back in a lot of ways. All the things that I once really, really thought mattered to me that I have since completely forgotten. It's just, there's a lot of hours in there that I could have spent on something else. That even if I had forgotten those moments, would have created something more constructive and positive in my life now than if I had spent all those hundreds of hours. Probably, I mean, very legitimately, it could be a couple thousand hours, even if I really think about it, of looking at news and getting stressed out about things that just do not affect my day to day. And I think that's maybe the question to ask is, what do I gain by focusing on the things that I focus on? What am I giving my attention to, and what am I getting out of it? And even if you are someone who feels like you don't want to be engaged in the news cycle, but you are anyway, like, there's something that you're getting out of that, and it might not be what you think. It might just be a distraction from the things that you actually need to focus on in your personal life. And that was the case for me, for sure. So, anyway, these days I spend a lot more time focusing on the small things and worrying way less about what's in the news cycle. I am wholly detached, except very, very minorly from the goings-on of the bigger world around me. And I just focus on talking to the people in line, when I go get my coffee in the morning, and noticing the birds. And right now it's fall and all the leaves are changing, and there's just so much more peace in focusing on the little things, choosing to find good things to focus on. And it makes it easier to bear the stressors in life, and it makes it easier to bear and make peace with the fact that there are macro big trend things happening in the world that are beyond my control. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I have no opinion or thoughts about what's going on, but it means that my day-to-day existence is not disrupted or subject to, like bigger picture things. And I think it's, I don't know. I mean, you might think that I'm nuts. You might find that I sound indifferent, or that I'm telling you that things don't matter. And all I'm really saying is that there's a lot more peace to be had, even if you do care about those things. If you are finding yourself getting kind of carried away with negative emotions. So, like my mentor said, life goes on, and I am really encouraged by that idea. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope it comes off the right way and that my point is getting across, because I think that there's anyway, like I'm sure the comments will be a little more ruthless on this video, and that's okay. But I hope it comes off that I'm not trying to say what you should and shouldn't do or should and shouldn't care about. I'm more just saying that I wish I had a lot of hours back that I can't get back because I spent time caring about things that, man, like I had nothing to do with any of it. So anyway, at least here, it's a beautiful day. Go check out the colors of the changing leaves this fall, and yeah, find something to be positive about. So that's it for me. Gonna sign off. See you in the next one. Later.